I was going to try and expand your attention and your consideration from what was last night a more personal, individual view about something into, I guess, would be considered a wider social, institutional, neighborly view. Having to do with, we're talking about a background behind other people talking about the real and the imaginary. And we were using the terms like factual reality, or something being factually so or being actually so. Would you try and expand your attention a little? Because it does have a different significance. Even though oftentimes I do not stop and try and beat you over the head and saying that this shift is more than simply a verbal, subtle sidestep. Because what it has to do, the example coming up, the way I was about to try and make you take a sidestep, it has very much to do, although it may sound subtle on the verbal surface, because it touches where ordinary people believe their skin, their existence ceases. That is the difference in our equation between I and not I. That, well, this could be very important in here. I may be thinking about this. And being an ordinary person, I am, of course, the close to the living exemplary epitome of whatever the thing is. But then when you look out here, outside of my skin, outside of my neighborhood, me personally, then it's a different story. Then I do not have the kind of control. I cannot whine, I cannot complain, I cannot decide, I cannot chip away in the way in which I do, because it gets out here in the hands of the unwashed masses, out there where dumbness is all in a lump and may please some people, but it gets very unwieldy because everyone can go, I know what's going on here, but holy mackerel, you let this kind of thing get out there in the streets and people get their hands on it, the riff-raff, the first thing you know it's just riffed and roused. So, it's not just a slight verbal shift, it's a big shift, because it, to ordinary intelligence, is apparently the difference between me and all the not me's. And friends, there is no bigger difference to ordinary thinking. You know that, don't you? If you don't, instead of difference, then make that a blank and then fill in everything that's ever happened to all of humanity in history. I know you can't get all in that one blank where it just said difference, but feel free to Xerox and keep doing it over and over, but at that little place, take out difference and just fill it in. The verbal shift I was going to suggest was, let's talk about an actual world and a factual world. And I'm trying to look at not just here, although some people's getting pretty sharp and you figure before the tape's over, if we don't run out, that we'll get back to this again. But let's start out and pretend that we don't know any better. Let's pretend that there is great significance out here in the world and that we're talking literally about what's going on out there. Now, to speak of an actual world and a factual world, again, recall they both exist. They both exist. There is no way to make any profitable distinction that one is more operational or one is more real and one is less real. They are both real. They both exist. But they have different functions, and there are different forms of energy, as it appears to man's intelligence, driving each one. The first thing I was going to ask you to consider is the factual world must rest itself on the non-actual kind of intellectual trompe-l'oeil, no sexual intent, that present facts as being of substantial, tangible significance. Let me refer, there are such quotes as this, but I am not, of course, literally quoting. But here it goes, from a reputable, popular publication, if not something better. It says, then Professor X, the distinguished biographer, concluding this article, concluding his life's work on God knows who, Napoleon, King Bruno, let's just say King Bruno, but I can think of many people this would apply to. All kinds of famous writers, musicians, and all sorts of people. Let's say King Bruno, that the biographer concludes somewhere in this article or in his opus study, his opus magnus of the man's life, that he ends up saying something like, or let's refer to it in the third person as I started so I don't have to redo it, that someone else is saying, the biographer, let's say it's somebody reviewing a book, Dr. X's biography of King Bruno, and they say, the good doctor comes to the satisfying conclusion that it was Bruno's illegitimacy that offers the answer to his militant reign, his sexual impotency, and his general torturous character. Now, I didn't really do any exaggeration or satire in that. That's almost lifted. I don't know where, but I got all this stuff filed away like you do that you can pull out. That is just, that would be, and that's a close quote from somewhere. But that is presented, and I'm going to lay it on you, as being a very proper, a very insightful, from any ordinary view, comment from a distinguished scholar pointing out something of real significance. And don't immediately jump into this being some sort of tongue-in-the-cheek or hand-in-your-pants attack on psychology, because you don't have to be a student of psychology now to accept such a comment. Let's assume King Bruno was a bad news, somewhere generally in your lifetime even, or just over the horizon, the turn of the century. Very bad reputation. And so this man says that once you understand, once it comes out, that maybe Bruno was age 20 before he understood that he was not the legitimate heir to the throne, that he was in fact, not just speaking in the regal line of succession, that the man was literally a bastard. Then the answer to that just quite extraordinary, aggressive, militant reign of which he is known, for which he is known, his sexual problems, which now are coming out in later years, and just his general overall tortured nature of the man. And you're sitting there reading it, and I'm saying you now on a widespread basis, not you personally. We're saying wherever that sprang from, let's just say our part of this planet, during our general time here, that's rather contemporaneous, that those interested enough to read such reviews, read that, and it has some significance. It has no significance. Not on any actual-based world. The question, I just picked out one, and we can go into all others, all sorts of others. Illegitimacy. It is now a little less than it was, but in your lifetime, and it's still, speaking in a psycho-historical context, it is considered to be of great importance. You don't have to go around thinking about it, but if you are slightly interested in something, and you find out, aha, Wagner is now reputed to be illegitimate. Oh, hey, does that answer a bunch of questions? All you got to do is just go away from militant reign, since Wagner never did get elected or take over a throne. You could pick out Wagner, since I've slipped up and did him. You could say, we could be now referring to some biographer of Wagner and say, well, the clue now is Wagner's illegitimacy. The clue to his long, torturous works that never seem to reach a satisfying climax, and his known sexual peccadillos, and his rather pushy, man was known to get in a fist fight now and then, aggressive nature. The answer to that, once you know it, his illegitimacy. It has remember, we're trying to take this from an individual level now. It has nothing to do with whether there's individuals sitting around here somewhere that you might be wired up to laugh at and say, well, who the hell cares about Wagner? Who the hell cares about book reviews? Who the hell cares if somebody else reads a book review and what their opinion is? You know, you're just piling silliness on top of frivolity. On a widespread basis, on a social basis, on a scope that is outside the individual outlet of energy, such things have supreme significance and importance in the factual world. But now to take it very quickly and easily, you do understand that in anything resembling that we can even talk about, an actual world, illegitimacy doesn't mean squat. That's biological talk for you. There is nothing on the actual in the actual world. Animals. Just make it obvious. You get, and then let's take this gradual process, and we're not making a comment on the idea, academic idea of human evolution, but let's say it's a gradual, which is not all that ill-founded. That it's a gradual process coming from dogs and bears and beavers on up to bricklayers and attorneys. You know, this gradual process on up until real people. The less civilized people on this planet, now and always, you do understand, surely you understand this, it's a known fact. They just don't look at it for any particular reason. That in the great world of anthropology, it is known that the less civilized the people are, the more sexually promiscuous they are, the less they are driven by senses of anything resembling Western morality. They don't even have words for illegitimacy. Somebody gets pregnant, the kid springs out, and whoever's closest by treats it like a duck, that you go up close and the kid follows that woman around. And just everybody takes care of them. To say that illegitimacy has any significance, you understand, at a level, and we can still talk about there are people, supposedly, that's still closer to that on this planet right now in 1991, and you've seen National Geographic too. You've read a book sometime in your life. There are people that they don't even have a word for illegitimacy. It is literally of no significance. And this, as you know, this has nothing to do with any sense of social mores or us attacking religion. I'm simply pointing out that the closer you get to a world wherein the existence of the world and of the people does not rely, or less, to a lesser degree, relies on facts, ideas, theories, laws, morality, for its existence, for it to define itself. The less you have of that, the closer you are to what we're now calling an actual world. And the closer you get to an actual world, for instance, our example, illegitimacy, they don't even have a word for it. And yet, you move into, we don't live there, yet you move in to the bastions of progress, civilization, the Western world. And the further you get into the forefront of social progress, intellectual progress, all forms of ordinary progress, you get into the factual world, wherein they will make statements such as, Bruno could have been a great man. There's no doubt everyone, when he was a little nipper, everyone said, oh, what a charming little prince. I don't think that that's where the term came from, but who knows. They said, what a sweet little nipper. I can't wait for the boy to become king. He became king, and he gave everybody the R.A. He was bad news. And people wonder what happened. What happened to the man? Then it comes out. Maybe it took, even after his death, maybe it took a good biographer to get in there and dig it out, because they tried to hide it. And it comes out that the man was illegitimate, and there's every reason to believe that in his later years, the man was no fool. But there's good reason to believe that he discovered it. And so what they're saying, in my little made-up quote, my repeat of the quote, what they're saying is, imagine the trauma. I mean, it's bad enough for ordinary people to suffer psychological blows. But I think it was Hamlet or one of his kin was talking about psychological problems are one thing, with the lumps of dumb out there in the street, the ordinary people. But when you get up here and to our level, insanity among the great cannot unchecked go. That is, it's one thing for a bricklayer to find he's illegitimate, and somebody go, ha ha, we found out that you're a bastard. The bricklayer may go, huh. Well, maybe, but I don't want anybody, my friends call me that, okay? Or he may even turn around and hit the guy. Let's go that far. That's one thing. But you take a Bruno or a Wagner, somebody's got that kind of power, they find it out and they get upset. Hell, they go out and attack somebody or write one of those, got a Damaron that just got your choice. Be attacked physically or be attacked by Grunhilde and the horns. Simply see, besides all the laughter, such things as illegitimacy. If I hadn't done all this, you could have sat in there yourself and read such as that. And it's just now part of your wiring system. There's nothing faulty in you, and it's not some weakness that you let slip in that, well, I should have known years ago that such things as illegitimacy. It doesn't describe how Joseph Stalin or King Bruno, how these people had such tortured, miserable lives. And I just thought, good grief, boy, that's annoying to find out a man had that kind of wealth, that kind of background. And then it turns out that he whined, he cried, they claim he probably never had sex. And then he goes out there and he's bloodthirsty as hell. And now to find he's illegitimate, find out his mother wasn't even married, and grow up. It just begins in our day and time. The more you live in the factual world, if somebody say the clue is not the answer, but the serious clue to this man's unfortunate nature, you can just plot it to the day that he either discovered or found out or strongly suspected that he was illegitimate. His illegitimacy is the clue, if not the answer, to this miserable life. And you would sit there. I'm speaking about you now socially, you institutionally, you as a city. You go, huh. All you've got to do is get away from the factual-based world, which ordinary people can't. It wouldn't even be profitable to them. But for you to begin to see how life is arranged at another level, it's not right or wrong, but at another level, illegitimacy doesn't mean anything. And the closer you get to a factual world, it does not. Now, I don't see that I have to stay here and torture you by going over this again. You can simply see. And some of you may already be wired up in this day and time. It's one reason I picked it. I could have picked one worse. But many of you are probably wired up that if you have on your own had read something about, well, you can explain the terrible life of so-and-so because he's illegitimate. There are probably some of you because life has already changed. Some of you younger than the generation of some of you others, that some of you probably, if you heard that now and you paid any attention to it, you'd just skip over it like, well, that doesn't mean anything. Because some of you may be illegitimate. Some of you have probably got illegitimate children. I'm not going to ask for a raising of hands. No. And so to you it may not be. And so I picked out something that kind of hit the cusp between different generations, because all of you are old enough to know that it was a serious matter in your mother, or at least your grandmother's generation. I'm talking about serious. In this part of the world, 2 generations ago, just divorce was a serious matter. People put children out of the room and go, But there are some of you probably now that do not even think of illegitimacy being a big deal. So that's one reason I use that. But you are aware of the fact that there are still people, those on this planet, those that are presidents, prime ministers, rabbis, ministers, priests. I guess you'll strike priests if you want to. There are generations of those that are apparently running the institutions of life. And to them, illegitimacy is a quite sticky wicket to consider. So, at that level, I just want you to see that there are people such as the quote that I sort of made up and half stole from somewhere, that they literally say, after a man has spent 20 years studying Lawrence of Arabia, Faulkner, James Joyce, God knows who, King Bruno, and he spends 20 years, gets a reputation, finally puts out the final word on King Bruno, and the conclusion, after all the interesting chit-chat and bedroom gossip, is the man, think of the opportunities, think at the crossroads in Western Europe at which he stood, where he was an observer, a part-time participant. And to think, when as a child he did so well in school, he painted, played a little flute. The boy seemed as a prince that he held the promise of a new day, a new order in Europe. And look what happened. He turned out, his reign, if there was to be one word, just aggressive, almost maniacal. And then his failure to produce an heir The serious now is no longer us laughing behind our hand. There is serious question as to whether the man was even sexually functional, which already ties into being regressive to modern people. And then just the general nature, he lived a miserable life, and there he was, had the richest cultural background of any prince sitting on the throne in Europe at the turn of the century. The family fortune was equal to any on the planet, and the man was absolutely miserable. But when you discover, as is now coming out, and it seems to be a little doubt, when you discover that the man was illegitimate, and he found out himself, he had to discover it. It was nobody wanted to talk about it back then, back in 1890. There is the clue, if not the answer. It is of significance. And I don't have to make hand gestures and say it is of significance. They said it's of significance. And I'm not going to say they're not correct, are you? You're not an idiot. No, you might be an idiot, but why waste your time? Even an idiot should do something worthwhile. Go ahead and do regular idiot things, but don't waste your time by telling the rest of life when they say illegitimacy is of supreme importance on the character of a man. Don't tell them they're wrong if they said that. You'll lose even your idiocy card. You'll become part of the lump. Simultaneously, at what I was trying to get you to consider now, an actual world instead of a factual world, like animals, like less civilized people. Not better, not worse, less civilized. That is, less living in a factual, driven world, where in their existence what they do is less and less dependent upon some fact, some theory, some explanation. They just live. Not better, not worse. Going. But it's still excellent enough that you know it and we can talk about it. The closer they are to what let us call an actual world, the less such things as legitimacy or the lack thereof has any significance, not even a word. And here it is juxtaposed on this planet, that there are groups right now that supposedly still don't even have a word. They may have heard it by now from a missionary or some other good person that came by and said, "You realize that half of you people in this village are bastards?" And they all smiled until somebody tried to describe to them what bastard meant. That they still didn't know, and they said, "Well, for one thing, when men get mad, those missionaries when they get mad, they call each other a bastard." And then these nice gentlemen, they just begin to think, that fat redhead one doesn't look, she might taste good in a pot. You have juxtaposed, coevally existing on this planet, people who do not even have a term, a word for illegitimate, and then you have groups of people, not only do they have a term for it, it is accepted without any analyzation, and it's not incorrect, but it's accepted as being a very, very important clue, key, if not solution, to just many of man's ordinary psychological problems. How can you explain that? Well, of course, you don't have to explain it once you understand that there is a factual world and an actual world. Rather than me doing it, I said we could, but I'll give you something if you want a hobby to do, is consider, I picked out illegitimacy. Consider the number of other important things in life that have no importance. It's a nice one on a sunny weekend because it won't strain your brain unless you're trying to do some kind of your own torturous version of Rodin's. You don't have to think hard. Just let your mind, just whatever comes to your mind, grab it. You'll have your ordinary mind says, well, wait a minute. Of all the number of important things that are not important. I guess it is better to leave it with you because I might even say too much. There is another way to put some dressing on this. I let go through a cow root recently. It's such things as illegitimacy and all sorts of others that we can say from a factual view that they are of supreme significance, very important, that they're taken at a wide level as explaining, in fact, a man's whole life. One word, of course, what goes with it, but one word, illegitimate. that there you are pondering, how could somebody like King Bruno, with all the promise and blah, 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 turn out like that? God, it just makes you wonder about the decency of life, or is anything to... No, man comes up and says, illegitimacy. Think what that one word describes in a factual setting. Whereas we point out that, as you can see, beavers, people living in parts of the Appalachian area of Tennessee, you say, is anybody around here illegitimate? They go, no, we're all born here in this country. But back to, I was giving you just a, wasn't just redoing that. I want you to see in another way that these ideas that we can say from one view are important and from another view are not important. But these ideas such as illegitimacy are of extreme importance in the secondary world of facts, wherein, back to the Kairos I was referring to, in the secondary world wherein nothing can be explained and therefore it must be. When it was first presented in the Kairos name a few nights ago, it got a lot better reception than that. Wait, I'll take that positive, though, in a positive sense. I think it's now that you begin to see a greater significance. That's it. That's it. In the factual world, since nothing can be explained, everything must be. And that's a fact. In the same way that in the actual world, nothing can be explained, therefore nothing can be explained. Nothing can be explained, therefore nothing is explained. Nothing is explained, therefore nothing can be explained. But in the factual world, you're constantly doing what? Not because of some fault of yours, but what are people doing? The more we're dealing with the factual world of art, civilization, religion, anything that requires some comment, then what does anything that requires some comment require? You guessed it, some comment. So that's it. Well, I'll be. If it can't be explained, then it must be. This comes out of the teeth and the slobbery lips of nippers, and adults hate it. The old man hates it in kids. Do I have to do it for you? It is just classic. It is almost a cliche. Kids, come on, get dressed. It's Sunday. Yeah, but we're going to church. Why? Well, we always go to church on Sunday. Why? Well, everybody around here does. Why? It'll be good for you. How? It is an easy shot for jokes. There are kids that get the growth of their teeth retarded somewhat by smacks because it is based upon not just some childish repetition of why, although it can seem that way, and I'm not inferring that the little nippers have any great insight, but it is based upon the fact that you're dealing with secondary things. Not to make a kid eat when he's hungry, but to make him eat that. Aren't you hungry? Yes. Well, eat your greens. Why? You understand, we're assuming the kid does not like greens. Well, eat them. Why? They're good for you. How so? Just eat them. You are now moving into the factual world. If he's hungry, he'll eat your shoe. He'll suck on the edge of a wet towel. But when you get past an actual world into a factual world, that you sit the kid down and he looks around like, where's my wet towel? Or where's a weenie? Where's a hamburger? No, you eat your squash. Then you get into what? Why? You get into, in the factual world, see, we're not talking about eating now, we're talking about dining. And forget all that crap that, well, I'm just trying to be good for the nipper. Yeah, maybe yes, maybe no. But you're past the factual primary level of eating. You're now into dining, into diet. That you're saying, well, when you're hungry, you want to eat. If the kid's old enough to have getting a spark on one cylinder, he go, yeah. Well, good, because me being your mama, I fix you something to eat, and he sits down and looks at it, and to him it's nothing to eat because he does not see a hamburger or the edge of a wet towel. And you say, I want you to eat this particular food. You are into the area wherein nothing can be explained, and therefore everything must be. Do you understand? You cannot explain. And I don't mean just between an adult and a kid. I'm just taking the examples as we find them. In the factual world, nothing can be explained. There is no way to prove why you should be a Christian, why you should like art, why you should be moral, why you should be courteous. Oh, I can explain it. I can speak for life. You can too. That doesn't take any talent. And all of the explanations are not only reasonable, they are what? Starts with an I. Important? You got it. In the secondary, the factual world, they are important. It is important to be courteous, to be moral, to be honest, just all the way around. It don't go shoplifting. It just runs up the prices for all of us. And don't go around and try to cheat on somebody else's wife, because if that kind of thing starts doing, then somebody's going to come try to cheat on your wife. What goes around comes around. Hey, let me write that down, you know. All of that is important, except for the fact that it's meaningless at another level. Therefore, it must be explained. You cannot. There's no such thing as a religion, as an art, as a political system, as an economic theory, as a market paradigm. Anything that is, we don't have to keep not only shaving this down to fine degrees, but making these Italian and Albanian. It's a combination, is what I was working on. Gestures, see. According to it, from your view, this would be the West. See, that would be my Italian. Over here would be the Albanian gesture. And then in between, of course, we're trying to take an Adriatic view. So that we don't have to keep shaving this down to fine little places. Everything, the closer you get into the civilized world, so I don't have to keep doing all this, into all matters of civilization. Art, science, religion, politics, economics, everything that makes men men and raises us, by God, above the level of hippos and she-wolves. All of that must be explained. If you put out food and people they're not hungry enough yet just to eat. That is, they're so hungry that if the waitron came by and their hand got too close, you might bite their hand. Once you get into the area that they're not just eating, that you're now into a civilized area. Now, instead of food on the plate, consider it's religion on the plate. Consider it's philosophy on the plate, a sense of morality. You cannot set it down in society. Groups of men fall upon it and eat as though their mama hadn't fed them in a week. You present a religion. I'll pick that out again, since to many older generations that would seem to be the transcendental example. If it's such a big example, do you remember the Kairoot from a while back? That some old sorehead said, hey, if civilization was such a great thing, they wouldn't have to keep talking about it. Some of you laughed then. Of course, now you regret it. I don't know why, but I just wanted to say that. If religion, for instance, if it's such a big thing, why do they have to talk about it? Now, see, this is not a knock on religion. But if religion was actually what your forefathers believed, this big old God somewhere up in the black velvet heaven, and somebody made all this, and outside of it, he wants to know what's going on, and we're supposed to make him happy and straighten up and fly right and go home and live with Louis Jordan. If all that was true, and it's that big a deal, we're talking about the guy or the gal, the thing, they just literally went, all right, boom, and made all this. Now, that's the classic idea of religion. If that's so, what the hell else is there to say? How do you have to come along and hire a PR agent? How do you have to discuss, if that is it, and say, now you're talking about the guy that made you, me, and everybody. Yeah. No, he couldn't have made everybody at once. Wait a minute, let me tell you about it. Somebody has got to explain it. And it's not because that the religion is faulty. I repeat, When you move into the secondary world, all of the things such as illegitimacy, all the way from that to religion, to the highest possible moral, philosophical ideals, they cannot be explained, comma, at least, or dash, therefore they must be. That there is an absolute, it's even bloodier than mathematical, but correlation between the degrees to which something cannot be explained and the amount of effort that life drives through man to make it explained. If you do not believe it, go and check out, don't let Mr. Dewey catch you without your card, but go in the library and pick out the sections in philosophy, religion, just an ordinary library, and see where you got the most explaining going on. I suggest to you, I haven't done any checking, but I'm just going to take a wild guess, being the devil may care type of guy that I am. I would bet you that the religion section in almost any library will far exceed the number of volumes as you would find, let me just guess, in the section on mathematics. I'll just bet you there's a lot more. I don't know. I bet easily probably twice as many books. And there are probably nowadays twice as many books on UFOs as there are religion. Which even gives me the willingness to think that there's something that people... I don't want to go into that because there may be some people from the library here. Anything that cannot be explained must be. Now for the third time, and let me expand that sentence. Everything that cannot be explained must be, now a good dash, hence, facts. That is why we have facts. I know we've looked at it other ways, and they're not incorrect, but this is the end of the week kind of view. That those things that cannot be explained must be. Or else they won't exist, you understand. And it's not when I say they can't be explained that they're not of any importance, because nobody can explain God. I mean, they all agree to that. People that's in the business say, well, yes, you can't explain it. You know, what's a bigger business than God? Well, nowadays there is, I guess, in most civilized worlds, the government. But who can explain the government? Nobody. So it's not in some way that we're saying, well, these things are some kind of imagination. The world is hallucinating. You know, not in your lifetime. Now, if you think that, you make them look sane. So it's not when we say that things cannot be explained in the civilized, ordinary world. That doesn't even approach being a form of criticism. And if you think it does, ooh, as I said, they can use you as the before picture in the lump dumbness of humanity. And we'll take them as they are now and show how things have improved, since your level of the abstract food chain. You got nowhere to look but up. So there's nothing wrong, but just notice, anything in the civilized world cannot simply be presented. You can't hang a painting on the wall and just leave it there. If you do, somebody's going to take it down. I mean, somebody's probably going to take it down and throw it away. Somebody's going to take it down and throw it away and not even notice it was a painting. You can't present a symphony. You can't present a book. You can't come out and say, well, I know you've heard it before, but this time it's serious. God, the big guy sent me. Let's say that you got your attention. And people go, because that's not enough. And from one view, you'd think, well, Jesus, that's got to be enough. I mean, this guy didn't come and say, they sent me from the Harvard School of Business. Yeah, that's a little impressive. Or the government sent me, the IRS. Inland Revenue sent me. I'm a little more impressed. Now a guy comes out, God sent me. You can't just hang it up and walk away from it. If it was closer to a factual world, and you're just dealing with an act, the kind of thing that needs, relatively speaking, but that needs no facts, no ideas, no theories to substantiate its existence, such as the grand art of ballroom screwing, dancing, sex. You could hang sex on the wall. You can hang food on the wall, food. Not cuisine, not a diet. You can hang food on the wall to the hungry And nobody hungry is going to come along and say, where's the artist? What does this mean? They'll fall on it and eat it. If it's sex, they'll fall on it and do whatever people do according to your local community standards with sex. If it's a bed hanging on the wall, people do not come by and say, interesting concept, but it would seem to me that whoever built this bed had a certain kind of sexual aggression that disturbs me. That tells me one thing, at a natural level, the person is not tired. If they were tired, they'd lay down on the bed. In the secondary world, the closer you get into what we're calling the factual world, the secondary world, it is what I am telling you. It's just obvious once you see it. And it's not to where you can then go, well, they're dumb. It's better than that. But you simply see that which cannot be explained must be. That's why it must be explained, is because it can't be. And that, of course, gives birth to its own little bastards. That is, the critics of life going, ha ha, yes, that's true. They can explain any of that crap. I knew it, the whole world's a farce, blah, blah, blah. There is a way, another little root came to mind a few days ago. There's a way in which you could see revolutionist thought as being a kind of vagabond, kind of an itinerant nature. That is, that it does not settle down in any neighborhood, revolutionist thought. It does not settle down anywhere. It is of no local importance to anyone. It does not substantiate anything going on. That's why one of the Kairouts that was a little tongue-in-cheek point out why such things are so well known and popular. It gives no local support to their reality, which would be factual reality. That any kind of new thought that you could have, and if it was widespread enough, which is not, but if it were widespread enough to be of any almost institutional nature, that is, a whole group of some large segment of one planet or in last body began to think outside the polarized limits of the ordinary ballroom up here, then that kind of thought would not be in any way supporting the factual reality. It would not be a direct assault on it. We sure don't have time to go into that, because it's not going to happen. But the thing is, to whatever degree it exists, if it exists in you, in some individual, you are not, to the same degree that you are thinking in you are not supporting your local factual world. You may be studying it, you're having to live with it, you're sane, you're stuck there, and your boss says, hey, my wife took up painting. Here's a photograph of her first show. What do you think? And you go, what an interesting concept. She just started painting. You send her my regards. You don't say, wait a minute. Well, not unless you've got a better job waiting. But there is a way in which I was going to say that revolutionist thought does not fit into the local community. Because your local community now, everybody's community, the brotherhood of man, you're back to the actual world of sex and staying alive and etc. But you've got your local community as your neighborhood that would be better defined as your factual world. And new thought, revolutionist thinking, does not lend any credence. Again, I repeat, it would not be a direct assault because one man couldn't do any good if he wanted to. And if he tried to, it would show that he was not a revolutionist anymore. He had simply gone bonkers or went to work for the IRS. So it's not going to happen. But the thing is, internally, the place wherein you are an energy transformer, you are not supporting, you are not carrying your weight, you are not fulfilling any obligation insofar as supporting the local factual world. And that kind of thinking would be like a vagrant. It just comes and it goes. It has no alliances. It feels no nationality. It feels no obligation anywhere. I repeat one more time. You sure as hell wouldn't let it show. Living in this part of the world, or if you're in Europe, certain parts, you would not let it show on Bastille Day. You wouldn't let it show here on the 4th of July, etc. You'd be right out there and there goes the king. God bless him. God bless him. Or whoever it was. Boy, you can count on my help. Yes, sirree. Here, you're a great painter, too. Look forward to your first show, King. I mean, if that's what everybody else is doing, Of course, you don't have to do that. All you do is stand there and nod. Or say, interesting concept. Interesting. That'll always get you. Those of you who may die and actually end up in some religious paradise or afterlife, I'll tell you right now, in case you ever think that you didn't do right, as soon as you see the big guy, say, afterlife. Interesting concept. Or you look at him, you say, actual God. And I didn't know for sure, but you're it. And he goes, you're damn right. Go, interesting concept. Interesting. I think it's worth a try. I mean, they may have you down in the column, questionable, but if you say, so your God actually exists, and I'm here. Yes, you are, kid. Go, God, interesting concept. Because some night he might want to have a drink or play a little cards, and you're the kind of guy, at least you got to do it in something resembling. Do you think we could have a philosophical sang-froid attitude after death? Come to think about it, when better to be cold-blooded than when you're dead? The only thing I was going to say that you're not supporting local view. You're not supporting the local establishment of the factual reality. And I was going to say that's another way to say that you are not helping the locals hold on to their polarized view. Again, it may not be that you're in any way interfering with it. And I was going to say you could almost, 2 minutes, you could take this one little step further and say that it's almost as though, let's jump from there right quick to jurisprudence, that there are like more universal laws than there are local ordinances. And these latter ones serve only local purposes. And the local purposes, from a more expansive view, are always a support of local prejudice. And I don't mean in just simply some nationalistic or chauvinistic or religious sense. The prejudice is their factual world. And that's what all local ordinances are. That is what all forms of diverse civilizations are. That one is not better than the other and all that. But it is local ordinances, but they are far removed from, if you can begin to see it, that which could be best described vis-a-vis universal laws. But these local ordinances are always, as government would say, that, well, you need to have grassroots officials, government, because they have their finger closer to the pulse of the local needs. And that's true. And that is one reason, you still hear people, and I'm sure some of you have nodded along in your old nervous system, that there's still those who cry out that we've got too many factions on this planet in life, that we're the great mother spaceship, and we all got to get together in brotherhood, man, yeah. And, we've got too many, not only too many religions. If you got two, you got too many. We've got too many nationalistic boundaries. We've got too many political systems. Yeah. But it's that same thing. It's still necessary. Those are local ordinances. Now, life still has men here and there dreaming of universal laws. That, hey, we shouldn't be killing each other over this and that. That's a factual fact. That's not an actual fact. That is factually so. But you remember last night we were talking the difference between that which is factually so and that which is actually so. That which is actually so is running. It's full-blown, such as war, murder. You don't have to prop that up. Doesn't require anybody's theory, doesn't require any additional facts to kill somebody. That, by God, is actually so, factually so, and that's based on local ordinances, such as thou shalt not kill, which is the same thing as, you can kill. Because if you couldn't, you wouldn't have a local ordinance saying thou shalt not kill. The universal is into the factual. That is, we got to stop this. It's a nice idea, but it's got to be propped up with words because it's not functional.